Ethan barely had time to turn the key in the lock. As soon as the door opened and he stepped into the hallway, he was violently pulled into the darkness. Before he could react, a rough hand covered his mouth with brutal force, dragging him into the coat closet as if he were a rag doll. "If you make a sound, you die." The whisper in his ear trembled with panic. Ethan tried to fight back, the smell of bleach invading his nostrils, but the woman pressed him against the wall with wild desperation. In the cramped dimness, he recognized the wide eyes of Emily, the cleaner. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like someone who was seeing the devil. "They're going to kill you, Mr. Ethan." Now she was crying, tears soaking the hand that covered his mouth. "Just look, please, just look." She kicked the closet door open a crack, revealing the living room, where the crystal chandelier illuminated the scene that would destroy his life. Ethan stopped fighting. His heart, already racing, skipped a beat. He looked, and what he saw made his already poisoned blood freeze in his veins. His wife Sarah, the woman he slept with every night, the woman who held his hand when he said he had been feeling inexplicable dizziness for the past few weeks, the woman who vowed to love him in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. She was standing by the marble fireplace. She didn't seem concerned about his delay. She wasn't calling his phone, frantic. She was laughing, a loose, light, crystalline laugh. She was swirling a champagne glass in her hand, the light reflecting off the golden liquid. She wore that red silk dress he had bought in Milan, the dress, she said, she only wore on very special occasions. Beside her, pouring from the same expensive bottle, was David, his brother, his blood. The man Ethan had carried on his back his whole life. The man whose gambling debts Ethan had paid off 3 times just last year to keep the loan sharks from breaking his legs. David, who always cried, saying Ethan was like a father to him. "Are you sure today's dose was enough, Sarah?" David's voice came clear, without distortion, cutting through the hallway and entering Ethan's ears like molten metal. He seemed impatient, checking his wristwatch, a watch that Ethan had given as a gift. "He's taking too long to fall. The doctor said it would be quick, an hour at most after ingestion." Ethan felt the ground disappear. The cramped closet suddenly felt like a vertical coffin. Sarah took a long sip of champagne before responding, running her hand through her perfectly styled hair with that vanity that Ethan always found charming, but now seemed demonic. "Calm down, anxious brother-in-law. I didn't take any risks today. I doubled the drops in his green juice this morning." She laughed again, and the memory hit Ethan like a punch. This morning, Sarah bringing the juice in bed, kissing his forehead, him complaining about the bitter metallic taste. She saying, "It's a new magnesium supplement the nutritionist recommended. My love, drink it all. It's to keep your heart strong." Ethan felt like vomiting. He had drunk it all. He had thanked her. He had kissed the hand that poisoned him. He drank it all like an obedient puppy, continued Sarah, her voice dripping with contempt. The taste was horrible. He grimaced, but trusted his perfect wife so much that he didn't even question it. By Friday, his heart will stop. Sudden cardiac arrest, no one will suspect a thing. His stress history, the dizziness we made up that he had, it's the perfect cover. Ethan felt his legs completely give out. All the weight of his living dead body collapsed against Emily. The cleaner had to lean against the closet wall and brace her knees to hold his 200 pounds without making a sound. It wasn't just the physical dizziness. It was his soul being torn apart. Sliced into small pieces, the chest pains, the cold sweat in the middle of the night, the mental confusion that made him forget passwords and names. He thought he was going crazy. He thought he was burned out, Sarah, so caring, scheduling appointments with her doctor friends who never found anything and prescribed tranquilizers. tranquilizers that she administered. She was killing him slowly, cruelly, and his brother was watching the clock, waiting for the time to call the funeral home. Through the crack, the scene continued, each word being a nail hammered into Ethan's coffin. David pulled a small, unlabeled glass vial with a yellowish liquid from his suit pocket. He shook it against the light of the chandelier, admiring the weapon of the crime. "What if he doesn't die, Sarah?" David asked in a pragmatic tone, as if discussing a high-risk investment. "What if this bull's body holds up? What if he just ends up with a disability? If he survives and can talk, we're screwed. The new will hasn't been signed yet. If he wakes up and calls the police?" Sarah walked over to him, touched her brother-in-law's shoulder, ran her hand down his chest, adjusting his lapel, with a physical intimacy that made Ethan's stomach churn with nausea. They weren't just accomplices. The touch revealed something more, something dirty. "If he survives, my dear, even better." She smiled, and Ethan saw her teeth shine, a predator's smile that knew the prey had no way out. "I've already spoken to Dr. Smith about the symptoms he's exhibiting. Tremors, paranoia, hallucinations, aggression that we'll say he had. We'll admit him on Monday, judicial commitment for permanent mental incapacity." She twirled, the red skirt swirling around. Just imagine, David. Ethan in a private asylum, drooling in a corner, strapped to a bed, with no one believing a word he says, and the two of us, here with the guardianship, the total search of the construction company and unrestricted access to the accounts in the Cayman Islands, without having to wait for probate, without inheritance taxes. It's the perfect plan. Better than death is death in life. "You are the devil, Sarah," David said, but there was no fear in his voice. There was admiration. He raised the glass to our new management and to the end of King Ethan's reign. In the dark closet, Ethan's breathing became irregular, a painful wheeze. Air was not entering his lungs. The emotional shock was accelerating the effect of the toxin, causing the heart to pump the poison faster to the brain. He began to tremble, an uncontrollable violent shake that rattled his teeth. The anger was so great that it surpassed the instinct for survival. He didn't want to flee. He wanted to get out of there. He wanted to jump his brother's neck. He wanted to strangle Sarah until that smile disappeared. He tried to take a step forward, pushing the closet door with his shoulder. "I will kill them." Ethan tried to articulate his voice, coming out in a guttural grunt, too loud for that tense silence. Emily's eyes widened, panic overtaking her face. "No," she whispered, trying to hold him back. But it was too late. Ethan's heavy, uncoordinated foot slammed hard against the metal tube of the vacuum cleaner, which was stored in the corner of the closet. Clang! The metallic sound echoed through the foyer, amplified by the marble, sounding like a gunshot in the silence of the house. In the living room, time stopped. David froze with the glass halfway to his mouth. His eyes narrowed, focusing in the direction of the foyer. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice becoming hard, alert. The tone of the cowardly brother had vanished. There was the criminal. Sarah looked toward the dark hallway. The smile vanished instantly, replaced by a mask of calculated coldness. It came from the foyer. "The maid, that lazy girl, has she left already?" "I think so. I didn't see anyone in the kitchen when I arrived." "Vanessa," David ordered, now whispering, slamming the glass down on the coffee table. "If anyone heard, if that maid heard anything, David, we deal with this today." "Get the gun from the safe," David said, walking toward the hallway. Ethan felt real, icy panic take over every cell. He had no strength to fight. If David opened that door, he would be killed right there, suffocated with a pillow or forced to drink the rest of the bottle down his throat. It would be classified as suicide due to depression or a heart attack. No one would investigate thoroughly. The money would buy silence. End of story. Emily did not hesitate. She knew that holding a man that size and dragging him without making noise was impossible. The vacuum had given away their position. She needed a distraction, something to draw attention away from that closet. She looked to the back of the closet, desperate. There was a precarious stack of old Christmas decoration boxes piled up to the ceiling. With a quick, almost acrobatic movement for the cramped space, she kicked the base of the stack with her heel, but held the top boxes with her free hand to create a delayed domino effect. "When I say go, you run to the kitchen door, drag, crawl, but go," she whispered in his ear, her voice firm, hard, with no room for discussion. "Can you walk?" Ethan nodded, sweating cold, the world spinning in a carousel of nausea. "Go!" Emily released the boxes and pushed the entire stack against the side wall of the closet, which bordered the garage pantry. The crash was enormous. Heavy boxes of glass ornaments rolled, banging against the wall, making it seem like something had collapsed in the pantry next door, far from the foyer. The sound echoed, deceiving the acoustics of the grand house. "It's in the garage," David shouted, stopping in the middle of the hallway and turning his body. "It must be that stray cat again, knocking over the shelves. I'll kill that thing." Sarah followed him, cursing as her heels clicked on the floor. "Let's see what it was. Quick." They ran to the right toward the garage door. "Now!" Emily pulled Ethan to the left. They emerged from the closet like two desperate ghosts. Ethan stumbled on the Persian rug, his legs feeling like cotton candy, dissolving. He would have fallen flat on the floor if Emily hadn't wedged herself under his arm, serving as a human crutch. "Come on, Ethan, come on," she groaned, his weight almost breaking her back. They didn't head for the front door. Emily knew the security cameras monitored the main entrance and sent the feed directly to David's phone. She guided him through the service entrance, a narrow maze that the owners rarely used. They passed through the laundry filled with his dirty clothes, clothes that Sarah would probably order to be burned. They exited through the side door, leading to the backyard garden, where the trash was placed. The cold night air hit Ethan's face, but it did not relieve the heat burning inside him like a typhoid fever. "My car," he mumbled, trying to turn his body toward the main garage, where his armored Mercedes was, his steel refuge. "No," Emily whispered sharply, violently pulling him in the opposite direction toward the back pedestrian gate, which was unlocked because she had left it open to leave earlier. "Your car has a satellite tracker. The key to your car is in the living room with them. You don't understand. They control everything. You come with me." They crossed the dark street behind the mansion, stepping on the grass to avoid making noise. Ethan looked back one last time. The living room window shone, beautiful, imposing, golden. The house he built with years of hard work, brick by brick, the home he thought he had, all a lie, all a luxurious stage set for his public execution. Emily's car was parked 2 blocks away, in the shade of a tree, so it wouldn't spoil the view of the mansion. It was an old Honda Civic, a 2005 model with sunburned paint on the roof and an ugly dent on the passenger door. She opened the door with the manual key and practically shoved Ethan inside. He fell onto the torn seat, his head hitting the foamless headrest. The smell inside was of dust, gasoline, and old upholstery. But for Ethan, at that moment, it was the only safe place in the world. The scent of poverty was the scent of life. Emily ran around, got in, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed. "Come on, baby, start," she prayed, banging on the steering wheel. The engine roared to life with an asthmatic growl. She peeled out, the bald tires screeching on the smooth asphalt of the upscale neighborhood. "Let's go to the police," Ethan murmured, his head thrown back, eyes rolling, seeing lights that weren't there. He fumbled in his pocket with trembling hands, his fingers numb. "Detective Johnson, he's my childhood friend, plays poker with me." Emily saw the latest generation iPhone light up in his hand. Without thinking twice, With the instinct of someone who had fled predators before, she snatched the device from his hand. "Hey!" he protested weakly, like a child. "Dr. Johnson has dinner at your house every month, Mr. Ethan. Wake up!" Emily shouted, her voice filled with protective rage as she took a sharp turn, almost mounting the sidewalk. "Who do you think covered up the case when your brother hit that delivery guy last year? It was Johnson. The detective is in David's pocket. He's on the payroll of the construction company. If we go to the precinct, you'll die in a cell before dawn, hanged with your own bedsheet." The truth hit Ethan harder than the poison. He was alone. The system he helped finance was now turning against him. Emily slammed on the brakes in a dark corner where there was a dumpster filled with construction debris, wood scraps, and concrete. She rolled down the creaking electric window. The GPS. "They'll track where you are by the watch, by the phone. Take off the watch now." Ethan looked at the solid gold. Rolex on his wrist, a gift from Sarah, meant to count the happy hours they would have together. She had engraved something on the back. He felt disgusted. Struggling, he unfastened the clasp. Emily took the phone and the watch. She glanced for a second at that fortune in her hand, money that could feed her family for 10 years, and forcefully threw everything into the dumpster amidst the concrete and scrap metal. The sound of the glass breaking was the final rupture of Ethan with his old life. She accelerated again. "They'll trace the signal to the dumpster. They'll think you were robbed and killed there. That will buy us time." She spoke quickly, more to herself than to him, trying to organize the chaos. They entered the main avenue, mixed in with the night traffic. The streetlights flashed across Ethan's face like strobe lights. He felt a sharp pain in his stomach, as if he had swallowed shards of glass. The poison was digesting his insides. He doubled over, groaning loudly. "Hold on, boss, hold on. Don't sleep," Emily said, her voice trembling now that the adrenaline was starting to wear off. She glanced in the rearview mirror, every 2 seconds, waiting to see the red and blue lights of the police or David's armored black car, emerging from the fog. "Where are you taking me?" Ethan asked, his voice fading to a whisper. "Hospital. Hospitals ask for ID. Hospitals notify the police in case of poisoning. The police inform the family. The family arrives and finishes the job." Emily replied, cutting through streets Ethan had never seen before, neighborhoods where the streetlights were dim and flickering. "I'm taking you to the only place where rich people and police don't enter uninvited." Ethan started to convulse. His body stiffened. His head hit the side window with a dull thud. Foam began to bubble at the corner of his mouth. "Oh, no, 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 don't die in my car." Emily screamed desperately, gripping the wheel with one hand and trying to hold his head with the other to keep him from swallowing his tongue. "Stay with me, Ethan. Look at me. Don't let that bitch win. Did you hear me? Stay alive to see her in jail. Stay alive to get your revenge." The word revenge seemed to reach some deep, primitive place in his brainstem. His body relaxed. A bit, stopped thrashing violently, but his breathing became shallow, wheezy, like a punctured tire. The landscape changed drastically. The lush trees and high walls with electric fences of the luxury condos faded away. The smooth, painted asphalt gave way to pothole-ridden streets, full of unmarked speed bumps and open sewage running in the gutters. They entered the community. The sensory shock was immediate. The noise was loud, chaotic. Funk music blared from the distorted speakers of the bars. Motorcycles zipped by, weaving in and out. Dogs barked at every corner. People were talking loudly on the sidewalks. The smell of grilled meat mixed with burning trash. Ethan opened his eyes for a moment in the midst of delirium through the dirty window. He saw a world he only knew from sensationalist headlines. A world he had always looked at with fear and disdain from the air-conditioned comfort of his armored car. Brick shanties exposed without plaster, tangled wires stolen from poles, power thieves, children running barefoot near black ditches. Hell or purgatory. "We've arrived," Emily said, stopping the car in a narrow, steep alley where the vehicle barely fit without scraping the mirrors against the walls of the houses. She turned off the engine. The engine! The silence inside the car was heavy, contrasting with the noise outside. Ethan was motionless, pale as wax, sweat soaking his $1,000 linen shirt, making it transparent. Some neighbors were standing at the door of a bar on the corner. They looked at Emily's car, then at the unconscious, wealthy white man slumped in the passenger seat. Whispers began. Emily knew that gossip spread faster than the internet here, but she also knew that the code of silence prevailed against outsiders. She got out of the car and ran to his side. She opened the door. Ethan's body nearly fell out. "Come on, it's close. You have to help me help you." She draped his arm around her neck again. He was dead weight. Ethan had completely passed out. Emily looked around. A young man in a cap was watching from a distance. She glared at him with a look that said, "Stay out of this." The young man looked away. She took a deep breath, drawing in air with all her strength, using every ounce of power in her legs, back, and soul. She pulled Ethan out. He fell to his knees on the dirt, staining his tailored pants with mud and oil. "Get up, man," she grunted, pulling him by the waist, her feet slipping in the mud. With superhuman effort, she managed to drag him. It was only 10 meters to the crumpled metal gate of her house, but it felt like 10 kilometers of a crucifixion. Every step was a victory. Every breath he took was a miracle. She fumbled with the lock, her hand trembling, dropping the keys in the mud once, cursing softly. Finally, she pushed him into the tiny yard and closed the gate, locking the world outside. The house was extremely humble, with the living room and kitchen combined into one room, the floor made of red burnt cement, the same red she painted every Friday. The walls were painted a peeling blue from the humidity, but it was clean, impeccably clean. It smelled of coconut soap, rue, and dignity. She dragged Ethan to the old, broken spring sofa, covered with a colorful crocheted blanket that her grandmother had made. He collapsed there, his large feet hanging off the edge, his dirty leather shoes staining the crochet. Emily locked the wooden door, secured the chain, the bolt, and even propped a metal chair against the doorknob, as if that would hold off the police or David's hired killers. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt her ribs, as if it wanted to tear through her chest. She rushed to the cement sink, filled an orange plastic basin with cold tap water, and grabbed a clean dishcloth. She returned to the sofa and knelt on the hard floor beside him. Ethan was burning with fever, trembling, his teeth chattering. He began to murmur nonsensical things, the poison accessing the drawers of his memory. "Why, Sarah? I gave you everything. The lake house, the jewelry. Why, my brother? I paid the debt. Don't kill me." Emily twisted the cloth and placed it on his forehead, wiping away the cold sweat and soot from his escape. She looked at that powerful man, the king of construction, who always seemed untouchable at the top of his glass tower, now reduced to a dirty rag, delirious and dying on the sofa of a cleaning lady in the slums. "The rich life is over, doctor," she whispered, with a mix of pity and determination, starting to unbutton his tight shirt, so he could breathe better. She carefully removed his shoes, placing them in a corner. "Now there's no black card, no driver, no armed security. Now it's just you, me, and the will to live." Ethan opened his eyes a crack. The blue of his eyes was cloudy, grey. He looked at Emily but didn't see her. "Mom," he whispered, a solitary tear rolling down his dirty face, cutting through the grime like a river. Emily felt a lump in her throat. She held his cold hand. "Sleep. I'm here. No one comes in here," she promised. Ethan groaned and faded away, sinking into the darkness of the poison-induced coma. He was alive for now. Outside, a motorcycle roared past, drowning out the sound of Emily's contained sobs, finally allowing her to collapse onto the cold floor. The night would be long, and the war had just begun. Time no longer existed. Only pain remained. A pain that wasn't localized but pulsed in every nerve ending, as if Ethan's blood had been replaced by battery acid. He didn't know how long he had been on that sofa. It could have been hours, or it could have been years. The poison, deprived of new doses, was now exacting its price in violent withdrawal. Ethan's body, accustomed to fine wines and Egyptian cotton sheets, now writhed on a rough polyester fabric, soaked in sweat that smelled like ammonia. He jolted awake. A scream caught in his dry throat, escaping only as a pathetic wheeze. His heart raced, faltering, then speeding up in a panic rhythm. "Mom!" He groaned, his eyes rolling back, seeing shadows on the peeling walls that looked like monsters. "Sarah, why are you laughing? Turn off the light!" A cool hand touched his forehead. It wasn't Sarah's perfectly manicured hand. It was a rough hand, calloused in the palm, but the touch was a kindness Ethan hadn't felt since childhood. "Calm down, I'm here. No one will hurt you." The voice was firm, an anchor in the storm. Ethan opened his eyes. His vision was blurry, milky. The ceiling had no plaster or chandelier. It was bare asbestos tiles and dark wooden beams. The ambient sound was a cacophony. A dog barking hoarsely right outside the window, a motorcycle revving, a couple fighting in the neighboring house echoing through the thin walls. He tried to get up, driven by... Ethan felt the instinct to flee, but the world spun violently. His stomach contracted in a brutal, empty, painful spasm. "Don't get up. You'll fall." The woman appeared in his line of sight, wearing pink. She seemed to have aged 10 years in 3 days. There were deep purple bags under her eyes. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, strands sticking to her sweaty neck. She wore the same faded t-shirt. Ethan tried to focus on her. Shame hit him before gratitude. He was dirty. He could smell his own body. He, Ethan Smith, the man who never wore the same shirt twice, was rotting on a couch in a run-down neighborhood. "Water?" he asked, his tongue feeling like coarse sandpaper in his mouth. Emily grabbed a scratched plastic cup with a bendy straw and brought it to his mouth, supporting his head with her other hand. "Slowly, Ethan. You've thrown up everything in the last 48 hours. Your stomach is raw." He drank with animalistic eagerness, the lukewarm water going down, tearing at him. He coughed, choking, and Emily wiped his chin with the edge of the towel draped over her shoulder. The gesture was so natural, so maternal, that Ethan felt like crying, "I need to." He tried to move, the physiological urgency hitting him. "The bathroom?" Emily hesitated for a second. She knew what that meant. The proud man would have to be carried. "Come on, lean on me," she said without disgust, without judgment. She put his arm around her neck and pulled him up. Ethan was heavy, but now he was thinner, dehydrated. He stood, his legs trembling like green reeds. He had to lean on her completely, his face buried in her shoulder, smelling the sweat and coconut soap. The 5-meter walk to the bathroom felt like a pilgrimage. Ethan gasped for breath. Emily grunted with effort but didn't let go. The bathroom was tiny. The shower was a PVC pipe sticking out of the wall. There was no shower stall, just a moldy plastic curtain. "Can you stand by yourself?" she asked, concerned. Ethan leaned against the concrete sink. He looked at the stained mirror above it. The reflection scared him. Unshaven, sunken eyes, yellowed skin. A ghost. "I can," he lied, his voice cracking. "Thank you, Emily. I'm sorry for this." She left and closed the door, giving him the last shred of dignity he had left. Ethan turned on the cold shower. The icy water hit his back, shocking his system but cleansing the physical dirt. He cried there, mixing tears with the cold water. He cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the fear of dying on that red cement floor. When he emerged wrapped in a thin towel, Emily was waiting with clean clothes in hand, a political campaign t-shirt and a pair of loose grey sweatpants. "I washed yours," she said quickly, seeing his look. They were quite dirty. "You had 104-degree fever. You were delirious, shouting horrible things." "What did I say?" Ethan asked, putting on the shirt that smelled of cheap fabric softener but was clean. "You called for your mother, asked for forgiveness from your father, and swore you would rip Sarah's heart out with your own hands," Emily said, her eyes downcast, "and asked me not to let you die." Ethan stopped. He looked at that small woman who had the strength of a giant. "And you didn't let me?" "No." She raised her gaze firmly. "In my house, death doesn't enter uninvited. Now sit down. It's the only thing that will stay in your stomach." The next day, his physical recovery was progressing, but the psychological tension was increasing. Ethan could now sit and take a few steps without dizziness, but the confinement was driving him insane. Emily's place felt like an island surrounded by dangers. It was late. The sun beat down on the asbestos roof, turning the house into an oven. Ethan was sweating impatiently. Emily was sewing near the window, always watching the street through a crack in the newspaper taped to the glass. Suddenly, loud, insistent claps echoed at the door, a shrill woman's voice. Ethan froze. He looked at Emily with wide eyes. Emily signaled for silence, her finger on her lips, her eyes wide with fear. "It's Mrs. Sider, the nosy neighbor," Emily whispered, barely moving her lips. She saw the car parked out front for days. "Emily, open up, girl. I know you're in there. I heard a man's voice," the neighbor shouted, laughing maliciously. "Hiding a man, are you? It's you, the saint." Ethan felt his heart pound in his throat. If that woman entered, if she saw his face, Emily slowly stood up. She needed to distract her. If she didn't respond, the neighbor might call someone or jump the low wall to see if something had happened. "Go to the bedroom now and don't make a sound," Emily ordered, whispering, pushing Ethan toward the only bedroom in the house. Ethan entered and leaned against the wall, holding his breath. Emily went to the living room window without opening the door. "Hi, Mrs. Cedar. I have a killer migraine, woman," Emily shouted, forcing a tired voice. "The car belongs to a cousin of mine from the countryside who came to get a checkup at the hospital. It's broken down. He left it there to avoid parking fees." "Cousin?" The neighbor didn't seem convinced. "And where is he? Not going to introduce him? People are saying you've disappeared from work, Emily. Is everything okay? You're not getting involved in anything illegal, are you? The police were here yesterday asking about a robbery in the South Side." Ethan froze. The police were sniffing around. "God forbid, Mrs. Sider. It's just a cold and a bothersome cousin," Emily replied firmly. "When I feel better, I'll come by for coffee. Now let me sleep. My head is pounding." There was a tense silence. Ethan could imagine the neighbor trying to peek through the cracks. "All right then, take care, but keep your eyes open." With those cousins. The footsteps faded away. Emily leaned against the door, her legs trembling, and slid down to the floor, taking deep breaths as if she had run a marathon. Ethan stepped out of the room. He saw the real fear on her face. This was no joke. They were on a tightrope. "They are closing in," Ethan said. "We can't stay here forever, not another day." Emily nodded, getting up. "Turn on the TV. Let's see how deep the hole they've dug for us is." The old tube TV crackled, the image greenish and distorted. It was the noon news, the program the entire city watched while having lunch. The red banner bled across the screen. The mystery of the tycoon, Ethan Sampaio, missing for 5 days. The image cut to the front of the mansion. Ethan felt a pang of nausea seeing his former home. Sarah was there, surrounded by microphones like a movie star on premiere day. She wore oversized designer sunglasses, a black scarf on her head, playing the perfect and devastated widow. "We are desperate," Sarah said. Her voice choked, holding a tissue in her left hand, displaying the diamond ring Ethan had given her. Ethan had been suffering. He was no longer the same. Psychotic episodes, aggression. He thought he was being followed. He stopped taking his medication. Liar. Ethan growled, gripping the back of the old sofa until his knuckles turned white. I was never aggressive with you. I gave you everything. The camera focused on David. He was next to her, his protective hand on his sister-in-law's back, the grave expression of someone carrying the weight of the world. Unfortunately, we discovered today a $15 million discrepancy in the company's accounts. David lied with sociopathic ease, looking straight into the camera. We believe my brother had a breakdown, took the money and fled, but that's not the worst of it. The studio host resumed with that tone of moral judgment. The police are investigating the involvement of a house staff member, Emily Johnson, 28 years old. Emily's photo appeared on the screen. It was the ID badge photo. Serious, no smile. Family sources claim that Emily and Ethan were having an extramarital affair. The police are working on the hypothesis that the housekeeper, taking advantage of the businessman's mental fragility, drugged him to carry out a multi-million-dollar scam. The bag of rice that Emily was holding fell from her hand, bursting on the floor. The sound was sharp. Mistress! Her voice came out a thread of a scammer. Emily brought her hands to her mouth, the sobs coming strong, shaking her thin shoulders. My mother in the countryside will see this, Mr. Ethan, the pastor of my church, my neighbors. She was shouting now, the pain of slander like a slap to the face. I cleaned the floors they walked on. I ate the leftover food. I never took a penny, and now I'm the villain. I'm the other woman. Ethan saw the destruction of that woman. He was used to corporate scandals, lawyers, crisis management. She wasn't. For her, honor was the only asset. And they had taken that from her live to millions of people. He stood up, the dizziness came, but he ignored it, crossed the room, and turned off the TV with the button, killing the image of that circus. Emily, he said. She couldn't stop crying. She bent down to try to pick up the rice from the floor in a pathetic and automatic attempt to clean up the mess, as she had been trained to do. Ethan bent down too. He held her hands, stopping her from picking up the grains. Stop. Leave the rice. Look at me. She raised her tear-stained face. They destroyed my life. I have nowhere to go. They didn't destroy anything. They just bought a war they can't win, Ethan said, and for the first time in days, his voice had the commanding tone of a CEO, but mixed with a personal fury he had never had in business. I will clear your name, Emily. I swear on my mother's soul. I will make David and Sarah apologize on their knees on national television. What? She sobbed. You're crazy, and I'm the scammer housekeeper. Who will listen to us? No one needs to listen now. They just need to see. Ethan helped her up. He didn't let go of her hands, his soft hands holding her calloused ones. The contrast was striking, but the fit was perfect. They messed with my money, and I endured it. They messed with my health, but now they messed with you, the only person who had the courage to save me. And that is unforgivable. In that moment, in the cramped kitchen of the tenement, the relationship changed. There was no longer a boss. There was a furious man protecting the woman who had become his world. Night fell, bringing a little relief from the heat, but not from the tension. They had dinner with the eggs and the leftover rice from the bag. The wobbly plastic table looked like a war room table. Tomorrow, Ethan said, drawing lines on a piece of bread with a bitten pen. They announced the gala. For tomorrow night, it's David's final play. He needs the shareholders happy to sign the transfer on Monday. Saturday night, Emily murmured, looking at his drawing. The house will be full. Exactly. It's our only chance. We need to get in, grab the vial of poison from the safe, and get out. Where is the safe, Emily? He asked, leaning over the paper. Her scent of simple soap filled Ethan's nostrils, and he found himself liking it. In the office, left shelf, third shelf. It's a fake book, The Divine Comedy, Ethan joked without humor. The code is 120. My mother's birthday, Emily completed. How do you know? I cleaned the picture frames, Ethan. She smiled sadly. We know everything about the lives of our employers. You all. They just don't know anything about us. Ethan felt the weight of the truth. I can't get in, he admitted, frustrated. The cameras have facial recognition at the main entrance and in the garage. My security team knows me by my walk. If I step onto the sidewalk, the alarm goes off. But they don't have facial recognition for the service entrance. Emily pointed to the back of the drawing, and the motion sensor in the pantry corridor has been broken for 2 months. I warned Sarah 3 times. She said she would send someone to fix it, but she never did. Ethan looked at her, impressed. You know the security flaws better than I do. I know the house, Ethan. You just lived in it, she said simply. I'm going. No. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. It's too dangerous. If David catches you in there, he'll kill you and say it was self-defense against an intruder. And what if we don't go? She countered firmly. They win. You lose the company. I lose my freedom. I'd rather die trying to clear my name than live running away like a rat. Ethan looked at her. The timid maid had disappeared. There stood a lioness. He felt drawn to that strength in an overwhelming way. I'll be in the car a block away. He reluctantly conceded, engine running. If you take more than 15 minutes, I'll go in there and knock down that gate with the old hatchback. I don't care about the police. 15 minutes is too long for someone who knows how to clean an office in 10. She tried to joke, but her hand trembled on the table. Ethan covered her hand with his. Emily, if this goes wrong... It won't, she interrupted, squeezing his hand, because now we're not alone anymore. The next day dragged on. The preparation was tense, silent. By evening, Emily transformed. She took off her civilian clothes and put on her old light blue uniform that had been tucked away in the back of her backpack. She pulled her hair into a tight bun, pulling every strand back. She took off her small earrings and put on an old pair of reading glasses to change her appearance a bit. When she turned to Ethan, he felt a tightness in his chest. She had become the invisible employee again. Her posture changed, her shoulders slightly slumped, her head lowered. It was a perfect and painful disguise. It's incredible, Ethan said, his voice hoarse. You completely change. This is how you like us, isn't it? Invisible, silent, she said without bitterness, just stating a fact. No one will look at me twice. I'll go in with the catering or decoration team, just another server. Ethan walked up to her. They were very close in, the small room. The air felt thin. You're not invisible to me, Emily. Not anymore. He said intensely, you are the most important person in my life. Emily held her breath. Her eyes sparkled behind the thick lenses. Take this? Ethan pulled out a cheap prepaid phone from his pocket, bought with the money from selling a gold chain that Emily had. Her only piece of jewelry. Keep it on vibrate, tucked in your bra. If you feel danger, press any button. I'll be listening. He placed the phone in her hand, closing her fingers around the device. Promise you'll come back? He asked. There was real fear in the voice of the man who usually closed million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. Promise you won't leave me alone. I'll come back, she whispered. We have a party to crash. She turned and stepped out the door, diving into the night. Ethan watched through the window until her blue silhouette disappeared around the corner. He grabbed the car keys, his heart pounding like a war drum. He waited 2 minutes, timed in his mental clock that never failed, and then followed her. He limped slightly. He was wearing donated clothes. He had no money, no power, no name. But as he got into the old hatchback and turned the key, Ethan Sampaio felt more dangerous than ever. He wasn't going to reclaim his company. He was going to protect his woman. And anyone who stood in his way would regret it. The Sampaio mansion shone atop the hill like a crown of diamonds embedded in the darkness of the night. From afar, to those passing on the avenue below, it looked like a fairy tale setting. Golden lights bathed the palm trees, Valets in white gloves rushed to open doors of imported cars, and the muffled sound of a string orchestra floated in the air. But for the crouched Emily behind a hedge of thorny hibiscus in the neighboring vacant lot, it wasn't a castle. It was the wolf's den. And she was about to throw herself down its throat. She was breathless, her chest rising and falling in a painful rhythm. She had walked the last 2 kilometers, climbing through the brush to avoid the cameras at the main guardhouse. Cold sweat trickled down her back, making the synthetic maid uniform itch against her skin. The bun was too tight, pulling at her scalp, a constant pain that kept her alert. She peeked through the leaves, saw 2 armed guards passing near the pool area, laughing and lighting cigarettes. They were new, big men in poorly tailored black suits, mercenaries hired by David. "Lord, be my shadow and my shield," she whispered, her mouth dry, kissing the small metal cross she wore around her neck. She waited for the men to turn the corner of the house, disappearing from view. She had 30 seconds before they came back around. Emily ran. It wasn't an elegant run. She ran low, almost on all fours, stepping on the soft, damp grass to avoid making noise. Her cheap rubber shoes slipped on the dew. She ignored the kitchen door, where the movement of waiters and cooks was frantic, a ballet of trays. Emily heard the clinking of silverware and shouts from the hosts. She moved to the dark side of the house, where the shadows of the trees were denser. There was the window of the laundry room. It was a low window, close to the ground, covered by neglected vines and thick cobwebs. Emily knew the latch was broken. She had caught her finger there 3 months ago, her nail turning purple, and begging the janitor to fix it. He laughed and said he would do it next week. He never did. Poor people's work. No one notices. A defect in the service area. No one cares. For the first time in her life, she thought, grateful for the laziness and arrogance of the wealthy, she brushed aside the dry leaves with her trembling hands. A large spider scurried across her hand. Emily bit her lip to suppress a scream, holding back tears of disgust and fear. She wiped her hand on the grass and pushed open the window. The glass creaked. Emily froze. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence of the garden. She looked around. No one appeared. The music from the party drowned out the small noises. With the agility of someone who spent the day cleaning baseboards and squeezing behind furniture, she slipped her legs through the narrow opening, sliding inside, scratching her arm on the rusty iron frame. She fell onto the cold cement floor of the laundry room, landing amidst dusty wine boxes and old Christmas decorations. The smell of the house invaded her nose. Instantly, it wasn't the smell of home. It was the scent of artificial lavender, furniture polish, and controlled humidity, the smell of her work, the smell of her submission, and now, the smell of her nightmare. She stood up, brushing the dust off her knees. Her heart pounded in her throat like a frantic drum. She tiptoed up the service spiral staircase. Her phone vibrated against her skin, a signal of life. It was Ethan outside, biting his nails, ready to rush in if she screamed. Knowing he was there gave her a surge of courage. She couldn't answer, but she pressed the phone against her body as if holding his hand. As she opened the door at the top of the stairs, the sounds of the house hit her like a physical wave. Muffled voices, laughter, silverware clinking against porcelain, the smell of shrimp and champagne. The party was in full swing. Emily entered the service corridor. She had to shrink against the wall when 2 waiters rushed by, carrying silver trays with canapes. She immediately lowered her head, tucking her chin to her chest, clutching an old rag she pulled from her pocket as if it were her magical shield of invisibility. "Get out of the way, lady. We're late," one of the waiters grumbled, nearly bumping into her, the scent of hairspray and sweat wafting from him. "Sorry, sir. Excuse me," she murmured in a hoarse voice, hunching her shoulders. They passed by without even looking at her face, not seeing the color of her eyes. To them, she was furniture. She was part of the scenery, invisible, just as Ethan had predicted. Emily exhaled. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought the sound would echo in the empty corridor. Invisible, she repeated to herself. I am a ghost. She needed to reach the second floor. The back service stairs, used to carry clean laundry to the rooms, were clear. She climbed step by step, pausing at every creak of the old wood, her eyes wide in the dim light. The second floor was quieter, carpeted, muffled. It was the intimate area. The office was at the end of the corridor near the master suite. Emily saw the heavy oak door of the office ajar. A sliver of yellow light spilled out, cutting through the dark carpet. Was someone inside? She stopped, leaning against the wall, sweating cold. Sweat trickled down inside her clothes, icy. She heard footsteps inside. Heavy footsteps, high heels clicking with authority. I want these flowers changed now, Margaret. White roses are for funerals, you idiot. I want red orchids in the hall. It was Sarah's voice, shrill, cruel, lacking the false sweetness she used with Ethan. And clean this carpet again. There's a stain here. If the governor sees this, you're out. Emily held her breath. Sarah was 5 meters away. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. I'll take care of it. It was the voice of the housekeeper, Margaret, that bitter woman, who always humiliated Emily, calling her a lowly servant and searching her bag on the way out. They exited the office. Emily shrank into a niche in the wall where a huge Chinese vase stood, praying for the shadows to swallow her. Sarah passed by, her black silk dress brushing against Emily's leg. The expensive perfume from her employer was nauseating. Sarah was looking at her phone, typing furiously, the light from the screen illuminating her tense face. Margaret followed behind, head down, taking notes in a notepad. As soon as they turned toward the main staircase, heading down to the party, Emily ran. She slipped into the office and closed the door slowly, holding the doorknob to avoid the click of the latch. The office was shrouded in dim light, illuminated only by a green lamp on the desk. It smelled of Cuban cigars and old leather. The scent of David. He had already marked his territory, smoking where Ethan forbade. The smell twisted Emily's empty stomach. She went straight to the left bookshelf, a whole wall of books no one read. Her hands trembled so much that she knocked over a crystal paperweight. She dove to the floor, to catch it before it hit. She held it just inches from the carpet. She took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in her legs. Focus, Emily, focus. She stood up. Third shelf. Third. She counted with her eyes sweeping over the spines of the gilded books. Civil law, criminal code, history of art. She found the Divine Comedy. The book looked more worn than the others, the spines slightly misaligned. She pulled at the spine. The book wouldn't budge. It was stuck. No, no. The panic rose. Ethan said it was here. She tried again, pushed inward, and turned. Nothing. Then she realized it wasn't pulling, it was tilting. She tilted the book to the right. Click. The false spine turned, revealing a digital keypad embedded in the wood of the shelf. 1, 20. She typed with her finger slipping from sweat. She missed the 0, pressed the 9. The keypad flashed red. Beep, beep. A low error sound, but it felt like a siren to her. Calm down, woman. Calm down. She wiped her hand on her apron, breathed, visualized Ethan's face, typed slowly. 120, beep, click. A secret compartment opened with a soft, hydraulic sigh. Emily's heart stopped for a second. There was the small amber glass vial, almost empty. The poison, the liquid death. Next to it, a stack of papers. She picked up the first one with her fingertips. Interdiction report. Ethan Smith. Diagnosis: irreversible paranoid schizophrenia, signed by a doctor she had never seen in her life, and a search warrant transferring full powers of the company to David Smith. I found it, she whispered, tears welling hot in her eyes. I found it, Ethan. They were going to bury you alive. She shoved the vial into the deep pocket. of her apron and the folded papers inside her clothes against her belly, feeling the paper scratch her skin. She was about to leave when she heard the doorknob turn. There was no warning. There were no footsteps on the carpet muffled by the thick rug. The golden doorknob turned slowly. There was no time to run to the window. There were no thick curtains. Emily threw herself to the floor, crawled under the massive mahogany desk in the office, an antique and heavy piece of furniture with a closed back. She curled up in a fetal position, pulling her feet in, hugging her knees, praying that the shadow of the presidential leather chair would cover her. The door opened. 2 pairs of shoes entered Emily's limited field of vision. Shiny men's patent leather shoes and killer red stiletto heels. "Are you sure you locked the closet, Sarah?" David asked. His voice was just above Emily's head, vibrating in the wood of the desk. "I did, David. Stop with the paranoia. No one is coming up here," Sarah replied, throwing herself into one of the armchairs facing the desk. Emily saw her feet swinging impatiently, crossing her legs. "The body hasn't shown up, Sarah," David said, pacing back and forth. The sound of footsteps on the carpet was muffled but oppressive. He stopped right in front of the desk. Emily saw the tip of his shoe inches from her nose. "It's been 6 days. If he had died in a ditch, someone would have found the smell," he said. "He's dead, David. Accept the victory." Sarah laughed, a dry sound, and Emily heard the clink of glass. She was pouring herself a drink at the bar in the corner, the ice tinkling in the glass. With the dose he took. That day, he must have had a heart attack in the woods, passed out and the animals ate him. Better this way, no body, no autopsy, no questions. In 6 months, we declare presumed death, and the money is all ours. Emily felt her stomach churn. The coldness. They spoke of Ethan's death as if it were the disposal of trash. With her hands shaking violently, Emily took her phone out of her bra. The screen lit up with the minimum brightness, but in the darkness under the desk, it appeared as a beacon. She covered the screen with a hand desperate. She unlocked it, pressed the voice recorder icon. "Record? And the maid?" David asked, resting his hands on the desk, right above where Emily was. The desk creaked under his weight. She could hear his breathing, heavy, anxious. "That starving woman, that Emily!" Sarah scoffed, taking an audible sip. "She must have fled to the countryside, back to the hole she came from, scared of the police. We laid the blame on her just right. We planted the doubt. No one will believe a poor, uneducated woman against the grieving widow Smith crying on TV." Emily felt a cold rage replace her fear. Blood rushed to her face. "Uneducated? No, I finished high school, you witch. I read more than you." The indignation made her stop shaking. Now she had a mission. "Tonight is our crowning," David said, his tone shifting to arrogance. He slammed his hand on the desk. Emily flinched. "I'm going to announce the merger with the Chinese. Ethan never wanted to sell that sentimental idiot. He said the company was family, a legacy from Dad. I'm going to sell everything, slice the construction company, take my 40% and live in Monaco. No more work, and I'll keep the house and the life insurance," Sarah toasted. "A toast to the end of Ethan. May he be burning in hell." They laughed loudly, laughed at the death of the man who supported them, who loved them. "Let's go down. The guests are arriving. The string quartet has already started," Sarah said, getting up. "Wait," David said. "Let me grab the success perfume. I like to wear it before I speak." Emily froze, the blood draining from her face. He was going to the shelf, to the safe. If he opened the safe and saw that the poison was gone, he would know. He would lock the house down. He would hunt whoever was inside with weapons. David's footsteps moved away from the desk, heading toward the shelf. Thump, thump, thump. Emily closed her eyes, pressing the phone against her chest, waiting for the scream of fury, waiting for the end. "David!" Sarah called from the door, impatient, tapping her foot. "The governor just arrived. I saw the official car through the window. You need to greet him. Save your money-sniffing fetishes for later. Let's go." David stopped halfway. He sighed in frustration. "Fine. The governor is a priority. He's going to sign the release for the port project." He turned around. The door slammed shut. The latch clicked. Emily released the breath she had been holding for 2 minutes in a long, trembling exhale. She felt dizzy from the lack of oxygen. She saved the recording. She had everything: the confession of the murder, the plan to sell, the disregard for human life. She crawled out from under the table, her legs tingling with pins and needles. She needed to get out of there now. Every second was a risk. Emily opened the office. Stood slowly, peeking out. The hallway was empty, but the music down below was louder. Violins played a triumphant waltz. The party had started. She ran for the service stairs. She had to get down to the laundry room and escape through the basement window. But as she turned the corner of the service hallway, near the freight elevator, she came face to face with a white wall. It wasn't a wall. It was Margaret's crisp, white, impeccable uniform, the head housekeeper. They both froze, inches apart. Time stood still. Margaret's small, cruel eyes widened. She recognized Emily instantly, even with the glasses, even with the disguise. Hatred gleamed in her eyes. "You!" Margaret shouted in a high-pitched voice of shock. "You're thieving murderer! What are you doing here?" Emily didn't think. She acted on the instinct of a cornered animal defending its young. "Shut up!" Emily lunged forward. Margaret, larger and heavier, tried to grab Emily's hair with her big hands. "Help! Security! The fugitive is here! Get the thief!" Margaret screamed, her voice echoing in the tiled hallway, trying to hold Emily by the arms. Emily felt Margaret's nails digging into her arm. The pain was sharp. She struggled. "Let me go!" Emily lifted her foot and stomped on Margaret's foot with all the strength of her hard-soled shoe. Margaret howled in pain, releasing one arm and hopping on one foot. Emily seized the opportunity. She didn't try to hit. She pushed, using her body weight to shove Margaret with her shoulder against the open door of the linen closet, a large, deep cabinet where stacks of towels and spare sheets were kept. Margaret, off balance, stumbled backward, falling onto a pile of soft comforters. "You filthy thief! David will kill you. I'll call the police!" Margaret shouted, trying to get up amidst the comforters, looking like a flipped turtle. Emily slammed the door in her face, grabbed the key that was in the lock from the outside, turned it, click, clack, 2 turns. Margaret's screams were muffled inside, drowned out by the towels and the thick wood. She pounded on the door. "Open up, you tramp! Help!" Emily pressed her forehead against the door, breathing like a locomotive. She knew no one would hear her down there with the party music and the soundproofing of the service area, but it wouldn't last forever. Someone would come for towels. Or ice. Emily glanced to the side. There was a donation bin in the corner. On top of the pile, she saw a familiar grey fabric, Ethan's suit, a charcoal Armani that he wore when he spilled tomato sauce on the lapel. Months ago. Sarah had said to throw it away because the stain wouldn't come out and he didn't wear patched clothes. Emily knew it was salvageable. She had tried to save the suit, but Margaret had taken it from her. And just below it, hanging on a crooked coat hanger from the lost and found, was the black dress Emily had forgotten at last year's staff Christmas party. A simple knit dress, boat neck, that she loved. Margaret had said she threw it in the trash. A lie. It was there, waiting to become a rag. "My dress," she whispered, pulling the piece angrily. She grabbed Ethan's suit, pants and jacket and the black dress. She rolled everything into a clumsy ball. She ran, descended the spiral staircase, jumping 2 steps at a time, nearly falling. She entered the dark basement. The window was still open. She threw the clothes out onto the grass, climbed onto a wine crate and squeezed through the opening, scratching her back on the frame, tearing the housekeeper's uniform. She fell onto the wet grass of the garden outside, free. The night air had never been so sweet. She gathered the clothes from the ground and ran. She ran without looking back, disappearing into the darkness of the vacant lot, while Strauss's waltz played triumphantly in the mansion, unaware that the queen of the party had just lost her crown. Ethan was pacing next to the Uno, 2 blocks away, on a deserted, dimly lit street. He chewed his nails until they bled. 17 minutes. She was 2 minutes late. His mind conjured horror scenarios. Emily trapped, Emily injured, Emily dead. He already had his hand on the doorknob to get into the car, start the engine, and break through the main gate. Forget the description, Ethan. He turned around, his heart leaping. Emily was running down the dark sidewalk, holding a bundle of fabric in her arms, her hair disheveled, the uniform torn at the shoulder, her chest rising and falling violently. Ethan ran to her. He didn't ask anything. He hugged her so tightly that her feet left the ground. He buried his face in her neck, smelling fear, sweat, and that cheap perfume that was now the scent of salvation. "You're alive, my God, you're alive," he repeated, his voice trembling, kissing the top of her head. "I made it." She gasped, laughing and crying at the same time, adrenaline pouring out of her pores. She pulled back a little, reached into her pocket, and pulled out the vial. She placed it in his hand. The glass was warm from her body, the poison and the recording. "They confessed everything, Ethan, everything. They said you were dead, laughed at you." Ethan looked at the vial, the proof of his innocence, the key to his life back, but when he looked at Emily, she saw something infinitely more valuable. She saw loyalty embodied in a woman. "You are the bravest woman I have ever known. We have to run," she said, pushing the clothes against his chest. "Margaret saw me. I locked her in the closet, but she will scream until someone hears. They will know we were here. We have minutes before the alarm goes off." "Margaret," Ethan laughed, a nervous and incredulous laugh. "You locked the housekeeper in the closet. Was it her or me?" Emily opened the back door of the car. "I brought this. It was in the trash. That grey suit is yours, and my black dress is here. We're going to change right here on the street. Do you want to enter your party in a sweatshirt and flip-flops?" she asked, already unzipping her maid's uniform. They squeezed into the car. The interior light was burned out, providing precarious privacy. It was a strange, intimate and hurried scene. Ethan took off the ragged clothes in the front seat, struggling with the steering wheel space. Emily changed in the back seat. There was no sexual malice, just an urgency for survival, but the sound of fabric sliding, their heavy breathing in the confined space, created an electricity in the air. Ethan saw in the rearview mirror the silhouette of Emily taking off the uniform that defined her as a servant. She was being reborn. Ethan put on the pants, which were loose at the waist. He had lost 11 pounds in a week of hell, but the belt held. He put on the white shirt that came with it and the jacket. The stain on the lapel was imperceptible in the dark. He adjusted the collar without a tie, leaving the first button open. He looked like a vigilante, not a stuffy executive. Emily wore the black dress. It was simple, form-fitting. It had a boat neckline down to the knees. She let her hair down. The brown strands fell in waves over her shoulders, freed from the bun of servitude she had worn for years. She took off her bottle-bottom glasses, ran her hand over her face to wipe off the sweat and soot, and bit her lips to add color. She stepped out of the car. Ethan stepped out too. They looked at each other under the weak yellow light of the street lamp. Ethan stopped. He had never seen Emily with her hair down and in a dress. Without the uniform, without the hunched posture, she was beautiful. Not the plastic and bought beauty of Sarah, a real, raw beauty of a woman who carries the world on her shoulders and doesn't break. "You are," he began, but the words failed him. His throat closed up. Emily stepped closer, adjusted his lapel, smoothing the fabric with tenderness. "You look like the owner of it." "All again," she said softly, looking into his eyes. "Ready to take what's yours?" Ethan held her hand, intertwining their fingers tightly. "What's ours, Emily? I won't go in there without you. Tonight, you're not the housekeeper. You're my guest of honor, my partner, and their worst nightmare." He pulled her close, his hand at the back of her neck, and kissed her forehead slowly. A kiss of promise. "Let's go. The show is about to start." They got back in the car. Ethan peeled out, tires screeching on the asphalt, not heading for escape, away from the city, but toward the main entrance of the mansion. The time for silent justice was over. Now it would be loud and brutal. The crystal ballroom of the Smith mansion shone with an intensity that hurt the eyes. Check crystal chandeliers, each costing the price of a modest house, hung from the ceiling like waterfalls of diamonds, refracting light into artificial rainbows over the heads of the city's elite. 500 people jostled in the air-conditioned space. The smell was a dense and nauseating mix of imported perfumes. Chanel, Dior, Hermès, mingled with the scent of white lilies that Sarah insisted on using, despite looking like funeral flowers and the metallic smell of pure ambition. White-gloved waiters glided through the crowd like ghosts, serving champagne in baccarat crystal glasses. No one looked them in the eye. They were floating trays, not people. At the center of the elevated stage, illuminated by a solitary spotlight cutting through the chic dimness of the ballroom, stood David Smith. He wore a perfectly tailored black Italian tuxedo, made to disguise the protruding belly of someone who lived on business dinners and had never lifted a brick in his life. His hair was slicked back, with too much gel shining like oil. He held the microphone with both hands, his head bowed, in a rehearsed pose of deep mourning and Christian resignation. Beside him, sitting in a red velvet chair that looked like a throne, was Sarah, the Black Widow. She was stunning and terrifying. She wore a black gala dress made of pure silk, but the neckline was too deep for mourning, and the slit in the skirt rose up to her thigh. Around her neck sparkled the diamond teardrop necklace that Ethan had given her as a 10th anniversary gift. She dabbed the corner of her dry eye with a French lace handkerchief, performing for the cameras that broadcasted the event on screens in the garden. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends, partners," David began, his voice trembling with manufactured emotion, projected through the high-definition Bose speakers. "It is with a bleeding heart that I stand here today. My brother, my guide, my hero, Ethan." There was a murmur of "poor thing" and "what a tragedy" in the audience. Some major shareholders checked stock quotes on their phones, only concerned with the impact on shares. David paused dramatically, looking up at the ceiling painted with Renaissance angels, as if seeking divine inspiration or checking if the ceiling was his now. Ethan left us too soon. His mind, brilliant, visionary, was betrayed by a silent and cruel disease. David continued gaining confidence, the lie flowing like wine. Paranoid schizophrenia does not choose a social class. He fought, we fought with him, but the darkness won. Sarah let out a loud sob, perfectly timed. David placed his hand on her shoulder. "But the show must go on. The Smith Construction Company is bigger than one man. It's a legacy. Therefore, with the blessing of my beloved sister-in-law Sarah and with the support of the board, I take on the interim presidency today to ensure that my brother's dream does not turn to dust." Polite applause began at the front, led by the usual sycophants, and spread throughout the hall. The state governor, present in the front row, nodded gravely. "Money does not accept a power vacuum. The king is dead. Long live the new king." Sarah stood up, walking to the microphone like a model on a runway. She took David's hand. "David has been my rock," she said, her voice soft, hoarse, seductive. Ethan would be proud to see his brother taking the throne, and I just ask for privacy to grieve. And of course, justice. Her voice hardened, her eyes sweeping the room. Because we know that woman, that cleaning lady we opened the door to in our home, is guilty. She took advantage of his illness. She led him to his death. "And a murderer!" someone shouted from the back of the heated hall. The lie had stuck. Class hatred was the perfect fuel. David smiled, a contained smile of absolute victory. He looked toward the back of the hall. He had succeeded. The company was his. The fortune was his brother's wife was his, and the brother was dead, buried in some hole, food for worms, and forgotten. "Let's toast." David raised his glass. To Ethan, wherever he may be, and to the future of Smith Construction. 500 glasses were raised, clinking. The sound of crystal clashing was like the sound of coins falling. It was at that exact moment, at the height of the toast, that the sound of a digital thunder ripped through the air. It wasn't thunder from the sky. It came from the 5,000-watt speakers, a sharp screech of feedback, deafening, causing everyone to cover their ears and spill drinks. The sound cut through the toast like a knife. David recoiled in shock, champagne spilling in his hand. "What is this, technician?" "Cut it," he shouted to the sound booth located in the mezzanine behind dark glass. "Competence, please," but the sound technician commanded. In the glass booth, the technician, a young man named Alex, was huddled in the corner, pale, hands raised. In front of the control desk stood a tall man. The grey suit was a bit loose on his skinny shoulders, but his posture was that of a general. His hair was disheveled, stubble on his face, and his eyes, the eyes burned with a cold fire. Ethan Smith. He had entered through the back of the booth. The technician tried to stop him, but Ethan just looked at him and said, "Sit and learn." His natural authority was stronger than any badge. Ethan connected his cheap pink phone with a cracked screen to the auxiliary cable of the soundboard. The P2 cable clicked in with a satisfying sound. He looked down at the stage through the glass. He saw David's sweaty face. He saw Sarah's made-up face. He tasted the metallic flavor of revenge in his mouth, mixed with the bitterness of the past. "Show time," Ethan whispered. He slid his finger on the master fader, turning the volume up to maximum, and hit play. First, he cut the lights. The hall plunged into total darkness. The chandeliers went out. The darkness swallowed the jewels, the dresses, the arrogance. Screams of fright erupted from the audience. The lights went out. "It's an attack." Then, in the absolute darkness, a voice emerged, clear, crystalline, gigantic, surrounding them from all sides, coming from all the speakers in the hall. With the dose he took that day, he must have had a heart attack in the woods. He fainted and the animals ate him. Better this way. No body, no autopsy. It was Sarah's voice, unmistakable. The dragged tone, the casual coldness. On the dark stage, Sarah froze. The blood drained from her face. The glass slipped from her numb fingers and shattered on the floor, but no one heard the glass break because of the audio volume. "And the cleaning lady?" David's voice asked in the audio, echoing like thunder. "That starving woman we laid the blame on. Her just right. No one will believe an illiterate Maria da Pena against the grieving widow on TV." The hall fell into a deadly silence. No one breathed. The city's elite, who minutes before were applauding the widow, now listened to the raw and naked confession. The governor removed his hand from the advisor's shoulder. The investors took a step back. "I will sell everything, slice the construction company, and I will keep the house and the life insurance." A toast to the end of Ethan. May he be burning in hell. Laughter, their laughter in the recording echoed. Through the dark hall, diabolical, mocking everyone present. The recording ended with a static hiss. "Turn on the lights! Turn on that damn light!" David screamed in the dark. his voice hysterical, high-pitched, losing its alpha male tone. "It's a setup. It's fake. It's a lie. Technician, I will kill you." A solitary spotlight turned on, but not on the stage. The beam of bright, surgical white light cut the hall in half and illuminated the double oak doors of the main entrance, which were open to the night. There he was, Ethan Smith, the dead man, the madman. He didn't look like the polished businessman from magazine covers. He looked like a shipwreck survivor, thin, angular, serious, but there was a dignity in him that no Italian suit could buy. And beside him, hand in hand, was Pink, out of uniform, without a bun, hair falling on her shoulders, simple black dress, head held high. She didn't look down, as she had for years. The house. She was looking directly at the stage. "It's a ghost," an elderly woman whispered from the front row, making the sign of the cross. Ethan took the first step. The crowd parted. It was instinctive, like the Red Sea opening up. The guest stepped back, creating a wide corridor in the middle of the hall. No one dared to touch him. The air around Ethan vibrated with a dangerous energy. They walked. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of shoes on marble marked the rhythm of the trial. David on stage clutched the podium to keep from falling. His legs trembled visibly. "Security! David!" he shouted, his voice cracking, sweat running down his forehead. "Johnson, security! Arrest that man! He's insane! He escaped from the asylum! He's dangerous! Shoot if necessary!" Two security guards rushed towards Ethan down the aisle. They were newly hired brutes who didn't know loyalty. Ethan didn't even stop walking. He simply raised his free hand, the other firmly holding Emily's hand, and pointed his finger at the head of security, an older man with grey hair standing to the side. "Johnson," Ethan said, his voice not needing a microphone. It carried the weight of 10 years of leadership. "If your men take one more step, you lose your pension, your honor, and your freedom. Get out of my way." Johnson stopped. He looked at David, foaming at the mouth. On stage, he glanced at Ethan, the man who paid for his daughter's surgery last year, without deducting it from his salary. Johnson made a sharp gesture with his hand. The security guards immediately stopped and lowered their tasers. Johnson bowed his head in reverence and retreated into the shadows. "Traitors, I pay you," David shouted, banging on the microphone. "I'll double your salary. Kill him." Emily and Ethan reached the foot of the stage. Ethan climbed the steps slowly. Emily followed closely behind, shoulder to shoulder. She wasn't a follower, she was a partner. Sarah, seeing that security wouldn't act, tried to run. She grabbed her clutch and attempted to escape through the side stairs of the stage, tripping over her dress. "Where are you going, my dear?" Ethan asked, ironically calm, his voice icy. "Weren't you going to toast?" Emily stepped forward. With a quick movement, she blocked Sarah's path on the side stairs. The cleaner and the mistress face to face. Sarah was taller in her heels, but Emily seemed morally gigantic. "Get out of my way, you trash!" Sarah hissed, trying to shove Emily with her shoulder. "You don't know who you're messing with." Emily held Sarah's wrist in the air with strength, the strength of someone who has wrung out a mop and carried a heavy bucket for 10 years. Emily's fingers closed like a steel vice. "You're not going anywhere, Mrs. Sarah," Emily said softly, looking into her eyes for the first time, not lowering her head. "The cleaning isn't over yet. We still need to take out the main trash." Sarah screamed in pain and released her arm, retreating, cornered, back to the center of the stage. Ethan reached the microphone that David had abandoned. David backed up until his back hit the decorated wall at the back of the stage. There was nowhere to run. Ethan looked at the audience, saw the shocked faces, the phones raised recording everything. The live broadcast must have been breaking world records. "Sorry for the delay," Ethan said dryly. "I had a health issue. A severe poisoning caused by overconfidence in family." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a glass vial. He raised it to the spotlight. The yellowish liquid shimmered. arsenic and digitoxin. He announced the chemical names as if they were a sentence, a slow, painful and undetectable combination in common blood. Tests, lovingly prescribed by my wife in my morning juice and prepared by my brother. The intention was to simulate a heart attack. "It's a lie! He's hallucinating!" Sarah screamed, trying to appeal to the audience, tears now smudging her makeup. "He's schizophrenic. Look at him. He's thin, dirty. He kidnapped that woman. He forced her to lie." Ethan ignored her screams as if it were a radio playing in the background. He pulled crumpled papers from the inner pocket of his suit. "Here's the real medical report, done this morning at the university hospital with witnesses from the federal police. My blood is clean of psychiatric drugs but full of poison." And here he shook the other papers. The search warrant that Emily had stolen, the fake warrant dated for tomorrow that my brother was going to use to sell the company my father built brick by brick. The audience began to boo. The murmurs turned into a roar of indignation. The mask had fallen and shattered into 1,000 pieces. David, seeing that the game had turned, that the money had vanished, lost control. The cornered animal attacked. "You ruined everything!" David shouted, his eyes bloodshot with rage, the vein in his neck bulging. "You've always had everything. The money, the prestige, the talent. I've always been in the shadows. Ethan's brother. You deserve to die. I should have killed you with my own hands." The explicit confession, live, in front of 500 witnesses and thousands online. David looked to the side, saw Emily standing near Sarah, saw that Ethan was 2 meters away from her, the weak link, the reason everything had gone wrong. "Is it your fault?" David roared, saliva dripping. "You damned meddler! If it weren't for you, he'd be dead!" He ran towards Emily, blind with rage, his fist clenched to punch her in the face. He wanted to destroy what Ethan loved most. The audience screamed. Emily flinched, protecting her face with her arms. But the blow never came. Ethan was faster than lightning. The fury that had been contained, cold and calculated, exploded in an instant. He intercepted David mid-stride. With a fluid motion, reclaiming the strength he thought he had lost, Ethan's body unleashed a right hook, a clean, technical, brutal cross. Ethan's fist met David's chin with the precision of a hammer. Crack. The sound of bone. Cracking was heard even in the last row, louder than any music. David lifted off the ground. His body spun in the air before falling heavily, like a sack of cement, unconscious in the center of the stage. Blood trickled from his split lip. Broken teeth flew onto the red carpet. Ethan stood over him, breathing deeply, his fist clenched in pain, the knuckles scraped, but his soul felt light. He didn't look at his fallen brother, he looked at Emily. "No one touches her." Ethan growled in an animalistic voice. Sarah, witnessing her lover and accomplice destroyed on the ground, began to cry, this time for real, pure terror. She knelt, clasping her hands in supplication, crawling to Ethan's feet. "Ethan, forgive me. It was him. He forced me." She sobbed, clutching his pant leg. "David threatened me. I didn't want this. I love you. I'm your wife. We were going to have kids." Ethan looked down at the woman he had shared a bed with for a decade, the woman he thought would be the mother of his children, and felt nothing. No hatred, no love, no pity, just an immense emptiness, indifference. He pulled his leg away, disgusted by her grasp. "Save your tears for the jury, Sarah," he said coldly. "You'll need a better performance than this to avoid 30 years. Sirens wailed outside. Blue and red flashing lights flooded the hall through the glass windows, painting the walls in emergency colors. It wasn't the corrupt local police of Officer Johnson. It was federal black cruisers and a heavy press presence. Uniformed agents stormed into the hall, weapons drawn. "Hands on your heads, everyone!" the commander shouted. David, beginning to regain consciousness, groaning and spitting blood, was handcuffed to the ground with no gentleness. Sarah was lifted by her arms and handcuffed, screaming that her lawyers would sue everyone, that she was a Smith. At that moment, the side door burst open. 2 officers brought someone in. It was Margaret, the housekeeper. She was disheveled, red from screaming, still wrapped in a blanket she had used to try to cover herself after hours of being locked away. "I'll tell everything," Margaret screamed to the police, trying to strike a deal. "It was Mrs. Sarah. She told me to leave the window open. I just obeyed. I'm innocent." The final betrayal, the rats devouring each other. Ethan watched, everything immobile as they were dragged off the stage. Amidst the boos and the relentless flashes of photographers, Sarah looked back one last time. The mascara was running down her face, transforming her into a mask of horror. She saw Ethan holding Emily's hand. "You traded a lady for a maid." She spat the final venom, shouting for the whole hall to hear. "You'll be the joke of society. You'll be trash just like her." Ethan took the microphone one last time. Silence fell heavily. Ethan looked at the faces in the audience, the friends who believed he was crazy, the partners who had toasted with David minutes earlier, the society that Sarah valued so much. He looked at Emily. She was trembling a little now that the adrenaline was fading. She held his hand tightly, her eyes downcast, embarrassed by everyone's stares. "Lady," Ethan repeated Sarah's word into the microphone, his voice echoing. "My ex-wife just said that I traded a lady for a maid." He turned to the audience. "You look and see a cleaner here, someone who cleans your mess, someone you don't even look in the face when she serves your coffee, someone you think is invisible." Ethan's voice choked, filled with contained emotion. "But I see the only person in this hall who has honor, the only person who risked her life, her freedom, and her own name to save a man who didn't deserve it, a man who never asked for her last name." Emily blushed violently, tears streaming down her face, but Ethan gently lifted her chin with his fingertips. "Money didn't buy loyalty, blood didn't guarantee love." He continued looking into her eyes. "I had to lose everything, sleep on a broken spring sofa in a rough neighborhood, and eat rice with eggs to discover what true wealth is. Wealth isn't in this crystal chandelier. It's in the hand that holds you when you fall into the abyss." He knelt there in the middle of the stage, in front of the TV cameras, in front of the elite that despised people like Emily. The audience let out a collective gasp, the great Ethan Smith kneeling before the housekeeper. "Emily Johnson," Ethan said, ignoring the world, focusing only on her. "I no longer have the arrogance I once had. I'm a broken man, trying to piece myself back together, but I don't want to glue any pieces if you're not holding the glue. I want to learn to be the man you saw in me, even when I wasn't." Emily was now openly crying, hands on her face, her body trembling with emotion. "Will you have dinner with me?" he asked, smiling. A wide, boyish smile he hadn't given in years. "Not here, not with these fake people. Will you share a hot dog with me on the corner? As equals, without boss and maid, just Ethan and Emily." Emily laughed through her tears, a laugh of relief, love, victory. She bent down and hugged him there on the stage floor, burying her face in his neck. "I will, you fool, of course I will," she whispered in his ear. "But I'll pay for mine." Ethan laughed heartily. He stood up, pulling her with him in a tight embrace. He didn't even look at the shareholders trying to approach to suck up and ask for favors. "Apologies." He dropped the microphone on the floor. Thud. The dry sound of impact marked the end of his old life. "Let's go," he said. They stepped off the stage. The crowd parted again, but this time it was not out of fear, it was out of respect and shame. They exited through the front door. The night air was fresh and clean. The police cars took Sarah and David away, their sirens wailing in the distance like wounded beasts. Ethan and Emily walked to the old Civic parked on the sidewalk, amidst the guests' Ferraris, Porsches, and Mercedes. The contrast was striking and perfect. Ethan opened the passenger door for her, as if it were a royal carriage. He walked around and got into the driver's side. He took off his fancy jacket and tossed it onto the back seat. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. "And where to, boss?" he asked, starting the sputtering engine of the Civic. Emily smiled, taking off her high heels and placing her bare feet on the dashboard. Relaxed and happy for the first time in years, she looked at Ethan with admiration. "Home, Ethan, to our home." The Civic roared to life, releasing a bit of smoke, rolling down the hill from the mansion, leaving behind the castle of lies. They headed toward the lights of the real city, where life truly happened, where love cost. Nothing but was worth everything. Did you enjoy this story of justice and love? Would you forgive Sarah if she begged for forgiveness on her knees? And what did you think of Ethan's attitude in the end? Let me know in the comments. I read them all. Until the next story.